get an overview of what DADA really represents for those of us who have not visited our conference or our website. So thank you very much. I don't see the chairman of our BOT here. I don't know if he's in this meeting, but he usually gives us a brief overview of what DADA is all about. But I don't know, Kevin, can you substitute for him just briefly, 5 minutes, just an overview of the aims and objectives of DADA? Kelvin, are you there? Maybe he's not there too. Well, actually, our main objective.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, you're there. Okay, please, can you just give an overview, just 5 or 10 minutes, an overview of DADA? You know.
Okay, let me just get to it. Okay, good evening, everyone. I just want to give an overview of DADA and what it's all about. The Diaspora Action for Democracy is a Pan-African organization that was established as a vehicle to mobilize Africans in the diaspora across the world to channel resources to their continent in order to enhance good governance and a transparent accountability and a transparent society. The aim is to deploy people of African descent, their competencies, their resources, and their social capital towards the mission of redeeming the African homeland from bad leadership, just to make sure that Africa is able to move faster and join the civilized world. And we know that to get to that, to attain that height, we need to actually encourage good governance and transparency in our society. So that's generally what the purpose of DADA is. Actually, the mission the mission of DADA is this: we are resolved to mobilize African people, resources, networks, organizations, powered by self-determination and commitment to evolve a shared sense of authentic African meaning of democracy, entrenching good governance and transparency in the society by encouraging and making sure that the populace is able to vote in good leaders in the society, thereby encouraging good governance in the society. I know that once that happens, everything will just trickle down. If you have good governance and transparency, ramification, aspects of governance, we know that development will speed up, unlike vice versa. What's the vision of DADA? The vision of DADA we look to materialize an Africa that each peoples are restored to a full civilized society, and a continent that is modernized, propelled by democratic and good governance philosophy and practices, drawing both technical, professional, and material resources from across the globe down to Africa to achieve this particular aim. Okay, then the overreaching purpose of DADA. The overreaching purpose of DADA is to facilitate and promote, like I said, just like we said before. But let me just go straight to our belief and core values and principles of DADA. With the goals. The first one is to promote a strong pride in the African citizenry. The second one is to nurture citizens and make them responsible towards their African aspirations. The third objective is to rouse popular citizens' participation in African affairs and to develop respect for human and people's rights as critical for all Africans. Then to nurture a culture of active involvement of people being led. To also support inputs and feedback from those who are being led. To encourage participation of the led in decision making. To promote the philosophy and practice of servant leadership.
What's happening, Genda?
Okay, then some of their goals also include to advance the rule of law as a basis for good governance, to foster popular participation and responsibility for groups and individuals, one of the main aim of DADA is actually to, like I've just said before, to advance the rule of law as a basis for governance and development, to encourage a transparent society, to nurture and build consensus and shared meaning when it comes to these particular values in the society, to also promote equity, inclusiveness, and other forms of social justices, to promote transparency and accountability in all aspects of the African society. So the far-reaching aim of DADA, and purpose of DADA, is to encourage good governance in the society, whatever we do, whatever aspects of the society, and it actually comes down to leadership. That's why hence the name Diaspora Action for Democracy in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I see that Dr. Cheta is here. I don't know if Dr. Cheta wants to take over the moderation of this meeting. We will appreciate that. Dr. Cheta, are you here, please? I think I don't. It looks like she's muted. Oh, well, looking at the agenda, I think the next item on the agenda is introduction of our speaker by Dan Elomba. Dan, please, can you take it over from here, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If you are a conscious Nigerian living in the diaspora, especially in the United States, in the 1990s, in the 2000s, after 2000 and thereafter, till now, you will have heard the name Professor Mobolaji Aluko. If you're also a Nigerian who lives in Nigeria and who always enjoys reading concise articles about developmental issues that concerns Africa and Nigeria, you must have heard of Professor Mobolaji Aluko. Professor Mobolaji Aluko is Ph.D. He's a professor of chemical engineering. He taught at Howard University, Washington, D.C., United States of America between 1984 and 2014. And when President Goodluck Jonathan established six brand new universities in the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, one of them being in Otueke, Bayelsa State, President Goodluck Jonathan appointed Professor Aluko as the pioneer vice chancellor of the Federal University of Otueke in Bayelsa State from 2011 to 2016. I think, Prof, correct me, I think that was the year he relocated to Nigeria from the United States. Professor Aluko is, yes?
True.
Yes, yes. So Professor Aluko is currently Ekiti State Government Commissioner for Infrastructure and Public Utilities from 2021 till date. I think before now, Prof also served as a commissioner under for the former governor Fayemi. Prof, I think I'm correct. Okay. So before his time, he was special advisor to the Governor Director General of the Office of Transformation, Strategy and Delivery, OTSD, between 2018 and 2022. Well, I think someone hearing this will think that Prof is a politician. I don't like to look at Prof as Prof is not a politician to my mind. I think Prof is a social activist, an intellectual analyst, because I've been reading a lot of issues here. That if you have read Prof's viewpoints about voting rights, diaspora voting, restructuring the country through federalism, accountability, transparency in governance, Prof has written a lot of articles. One of the articles I love to read about Prof, which I don't know he's still writing about, is the Monday quarterbacking. Prof, I don't know whether you still Monday quarterbacking. In fact, you read it, you just see the topical issues of the day articulated and properly analyzed, and not only criticism, Prof will proffer solutions. So tonight, I'm happy that we have Professor Aluko in our midst to do justice to this issue. Prof comes from, has a good pedigree. If you also know Professor Sam Aluko of the First Republic, That is the father of Professor Mobolaji Aluko. He has a good number of brothers who have also participated effectively in Nigeria, who have shaped Nigerian political direction in so many ways. So, Prof, we are happy to have you in our midst today, and we'll be happy to listen to you speak on some topical issues on how the diaspora Nigerians can contribute the way you have done in so many ways towards the entrenchment of democracy and good governance in Africa. We're happy to have you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right, Prof. I think our topic for today is diaspora's contribution to the power sector in Africa using Nigeria as a case study. So it's over to you there, Professor, please.
Okay, thank you very much for your gracious introduction, Daniel Alomba. And I'm happy to be able to talk with a number of you today about the topic at hand. But just permit me to indicate the importance of diaspora participation in their home country. It is not because we have any special knowledge. It is just because we have a particular loyalty and love for our home country, especially those of us who enjoyed our home country when it was at its best, and look back to those days. And when we say it was at its best, it wasn't that they had all the luxuries, but you could see an increasing improvement, only to find that at some point, things started to go haywire. The point also is that for those of us in the diaspora who want to participate in home country affairs, we must come to it with a certain level of humility. Not one in which you think you have all the answers, because the country you are coming from itself does not have all the answers. They too are struggling. They may not be struggling in the same arenas that your home country is struggling, but they too are struggling in some arenas. So that's the first thing. You come with a sense of humility that the people at home too are trying their best. Yeah, their leaders may have some issues, but the people too are trying their best to do what they want to do. I always say, when you want to step into a swimming pool, you always have to find out the temperature of the swimming pool, the depth of the swimming pool, whether there are sharks or snakes in the swimming pool, and all of those things before you dive into the swimming pool. So, yeah, and it's always nice to understand that the same comforts you are living may not be the ones that you get, but there is always a trade-off between respect for what you do and just being in a slave field. Sometimes many of us abroad who we have reached even the very height of our professions. I was head of department at Howard University for 8-9 years, was a national director of a program for 9-10 years. But at some point, you just feel that you need to go back home and do what you have to do. And then when I've been writing a lot, I mean, Alomba says I've been writing on Nigeria since 1993, since June 12. Been writing on all manners of things in Nigeria. So when in 2011, I was asked to come and be vice chancellor, I didn't apply for it. I was asked to come and be vice chancellor. It will be inappropriate for me not to accept it, because after you have said all of these things, now you are given an opportunity to make a difference and you run. I think that will have been the last article I will have written, because after that they'll say, well, now they gave you an opportunity, you couldn't do it. When I was leaving, I don't know whether Dan was there. There were all kinds of criticisms from the diaspora. You are going to be messed up. You said you were anti-government. Now they give you are going to eat, and if you are eating, you cannot talk. All those kinds of things. But it was those warnings too that assisted me in ensuring that I made the diaspora my constituency. So everything I was doing, I was letting the diaspora know. I had some diaspora people in my university. All the things I was doing, I was sending information to them. I still do it up until today. Even though I have been away from the diaspora for quite a while, I ensure that the diaspora people who knew me, I give them information all the time about what I'm doing so that they know that sometimes I don't consider myself diaspora too much. When I was abroad too, we sued the federal government about diaspora voting, and we won the case, but it was never instituted. But they're going back to try to get diaspora voting now, and I'm hoping at some point. And when we say diaspora voting, it's not, we've always been able to vote if you go home. But diaspora voting means that you want to be able to stay in Houston or stay in New Jersey, wherever, and be able to vote. It is diaspora voting in situ, not just the ability of diasporas to vote. It's diaspora voting in situ. I always want people to understand that. Let me now come to the topic at hand, the issue of electricity. I'm a chemical engineer, so I'm not an electrical engineer. But I'm very keenly aware that no nation can develop without its electricity sector being fully developed. It's impossible. You look around the room that you are in, everything that you see has been cut somehow or the other, been cut to size. And there's nothing that you see that has been cut to size that has not been through some electromechanical work. Okay? There's nothing modern. You cannot, so that's the first thing, that anything you see, you can look at with your eyes around you, has had electromechanical activity involved in it. So the built world is an electromechanical world. Not to talk of the issue of lighting. You need electricity for lighting. You need electricity for cooking. You need electricity for industry. You need electricity for commerce. And when we even say electricity, it's not just electricity, it's adequate, available, accessible, reliable, and sustainable electricity. Those 5 things are what you need. You need it to be available. That is available does not mean it's accessible. You need it to be accessible. That's accessible does not mean it is reliable. It is adequate. You need it to be adequate for the purpose you want it for. Because the electricity for residential is different from electricity for commercial, is different from electricity for industrial, for street lights. You need it to be reliable, and you need it to be sustainable, meaning that somewhere along the other, electricity is a commodity. It is bought, it is created, it is sold, and it is bought. So there has to be a market. And when there's a market, it means that somebody has to pay for it so that that market can continue. You bring something to the market, you sell it, you get money, you make a profit, you go back and get more of it to sell again. And as more people in the society increases, you require more of that commodity. And there will be always those, in any market, there's always a retail market, those who do a lot of it, and then there will be a wholesale market, those who produce a lot of it, and then there's a retail market, those who will now sell in smaller bits. So it's the same issue. Those who produce electricity as a whole, I mean, Gencos and whoever, and then there's the retail portion, the distributors who sell to the individual. So it's the same idea of electricity market that you have in any market. And anytime you have the market, there needs to be regulation. There needs to be regulation. There needs to be regulation of prices, consumer protection due to safety issues. So tariffs, safety, standards, and all of those. So that's the broad view about electricity. And no area is diasporans more keen to participate than in the electricity market, if that is their forte, because they know how electricity is, where they're coming from. Electricity is taken for granted where you are. You don't think for a day that when you wake up in Houston tomorrow or in Washington, D.C., there will be no electricity. It just does not feature into your prayer points. Huh? Nigeria, it will feature into their prayer point that make electricity day tomorrow. My birthday is coming. You know, you're never sure about that. You know, so we need to be able to have a situation where electricity is no longer a prayer point. Electricity is not rocket science. Electricity is not rocket science. And when you now hear that even in South Africa, where they have 48,000 megawatts for 48 million people, there's electricity. There's going to be elections in 2 days in South Africa. And electricity, crime, and employment and unemployment are the three major issues that may get ANC not to have a majority in their parliament. First time, like electricity is number one reason why they may not have a majority parliament the next time, followed by crime and followed by unemployment. Imagine in Nigeria, we have 4,000 megawatts for 200 million people. South Africa has 58,000 megawatts for 58 million people. We have 4,000 megawatts. What we are talking about is really municipal energy. Nigerians are providing almost 40,000 megawatts by themselves. Their generators, their private solar, generators, both petrol and diesel. They are providing those things on their own. But when you have a job to do and the enabler becomes your job, you are a barber, you are not an energy producer, and then you spend so much time trying to produce energy for yourself. You are a shoemaker, you are supposed to produce water, and the production of energy becomes overwhelming for you. Then you are not doing what you should do. And that's why we talk about municipal energy. There should be energy that is produced for everybody to use, so that each person is not producing energy himself. It just costs so much more for you to produce energy by yourself when a municipal energy that can be produced for everybody to tap into. And that's really where we are going to. Nigeria's electricity situation is very, very dire. And if there's any one area that our unitary federalism has caused us to be where we are, it is in the energy sector. Energy is local. That is, the primary sources of energy for electricity are local, and the energy needs are local. So when I say primary energy sources are local, there are places where there's oil and gas. There are places where there's coal. There are places where there is hydro. You should use the primary sources of energy that are available to where you are. But when you decide to use hydro in Kenji and send it to me in Ekiti, and ignore the solar that I have in Ekiti, ignore the hydro that I have in Ekiti, then the inefficiency of having to transmit energy so long distances exists. the need for the type of electricity that I need in Ekiti may be different from that in Lagos, or may be different from that in Borno. But because you are doing it on a federal basis, you want equality rather than equity. And so you send electricity in equal amount to Yobe and to Lagos and to Ekiti when their needs are different. So it gets there and it doesn't get used. So either it's rolled back to the country, rolled back to the center, it doesn't get used. And you know, electricity cannot be stored. So somehow it tears off. Those are part of the inefficiencies. And that's why the new Electricity Amendment Act and the new Electricity Act, which deregulates national electricity into the states. It's a very major step that now allows the states to take better control of the electricity. Okay, and you know my state, I am Commissioner for Infrastructure and Public Utility. We have been at the forefront of ensuring that now that this order is on, we have enacted our own laws. We have fulfilled the constitutional requirements for ensuring that we have full regulatory control. Yeah, yesterday, 2 days ago, we formed the Ekiti State Electricity Company so that we can take part in the entire value chain. We may not take part in every portion, but we don't believe that government should be shut out of any portion of the electricity value chain. One of the major diasporans who have been actually effective in the electricity industry in Nigeria has been Professor Batten Naji. Even before he became Commissioner for Power at some point, he had floated geometric power that first actually gave Abuja its what we call the fenced-off power. And for 20 years, he's been fighting hard to get geometric power to give power to Abia State. And he has just succeeded in getting, I think, 134 megawatts to 7-8 local governments in the southeast. We in Ekiti have been more modest. Starting November, we started a 2 megawatt compressed natural gas IPP, independent power plant, that generates 24/7 electricity to Government House, to the Secretariat, and to the Ekiti State Teaching Hospital. Now, 2 megawatts compared with 134 megawatts may look small, but they are generating 134 megawatts to 7-8 local governments. We are generating the 2 megawatts in an 11-kilometer distribution network. So the scale may be large, but the scale per capita may be about the same scale that we are looking at. And again, it is not run by government. Ours is run by private enterprise, just as Geometric is run by private enterprise. But these are the kinds of things that Diaspora have done in Ekiti, in Nigeria, at least the Abia issue, and then our own Ekiti one, which I have championed since the beginning of time when I've been the commissioner here. So we are in exciting times. The first thing is to understand that electricity is essential to development. There are just no two ways about it. Our water situation in my state, for example, we cannot solve our water problem without solving our electricity problem. You can have all the water in the world, you can have all the ocean in the world, but if you cannot treat the water and pump from point A to point B, you'll just be looking at the water. So many things. Education, studies, laboratory work, industry, commerce. We are not even in the transportation arena yet. You know how much electricity is used in the transportation arena abroad. Okay, nobody will want to use electricity for transportation in Nigeria right now because plane will just stop inside the bush. because the electricity is not reliable. But it can get to that situation. The electricity is not rocket science. And I think if those of us abroad demystify electricity and just look at it, it is you need the primary source of energy, you need to generate enough of it, you need to transmit using a smart, not a radial grid, but a real mesh grid. You need to distribute properly. You need to collect. You need to have meters. The situation where 60, 70, 80% of the people who are having electricity are not metered is unacceptable. In my state, out of the 110,000 BDC customers, only 21,000 are metered. It's 19% metering. We are going to, that is the first thing that we want to be able to stop to repair in my state. Because if you do not meter and you do estimated billing under a reliable electricity regime, people are unhappy to pay. And if you don't collect, you cannot pay for transmission. The transmission people cannot pay for for generation, and the generation people cannot pay for the primary source of energy. So I think I'm done about the whole general issue of how important electricity is, what is some of the things that the diaspora have contributed, and going forward, the promise that in the deregulation of electricity, where electricity should have been in the first instance, at the state level, at the local level, is where we are now. And we are hoping as many more states as possible will enact their laws. Out of the 36 states, only 6 or 7 of us have enacted our laws. Out of those 7, 3 of us have further gone on to ensure that we are able to be given the full orders, Enugu, Ekiti, and Ondo states. And we are hoping that very soon others will join us. Let me stop there for now, because I know that there will be questions and we can go on. Thank you, God, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. This is very exciting. Well, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Cheta to moderate the questions and answers. If you have any question, please, indicate by raising up your hand or put your questions in the chat. Thank you very much. Well, I think I better start with my own question. You stated that the states are now in control of electricity production. Does that still include the transmission and the building of their own transmission line, or they still depend on the national grid? Thank you.
No, they are not in control of transmission, generation, transmission, and distribution. They're in control of their regulation, okay? Which means that they have the authority to approve generation, transmission, and distribution entities in the market. In the previous time, all of that could only be done by National Electricity Regulatory Commission. But with the new deregulation, the states have to set up their electricity regulation boards, state electricity regulation bureaus or boards that can now license people who can generate, distribute, generate, transmit, and distribution. Before now, there were 27 GENCOs, 1 TRANSCO, and 11 DISCOs. Okay, the GENCOs remain. And the previous GENCO situation was that they will generate wherever they are, but the distribution across the state, across the country, through the 1 TRANSCO they had was through a central command. So there could be generation at Egbe in Lagos, and Egbe will somehow tell Oshogbo that this is how much I've generated, and Oshogbo will say, okay, send it to this place and send it to that place. In the deregulated environment, we are expecting that more generation companies will come up within the state. And those generation companies will be licensed by the state equity, by the state regulatory boards. And those GenCos could be off-grid or on-grid. They could be off-grid, no relationship with any grid at all, or on-grid. And those grids could either be state grids that are parallel to the national grid that we have now, or the national grid itself. The industry will grow if the states recognize that they have to create their own state grids. The national grid is the national grid. There's a little you can do on a state level on the national grid. If you spend money on the national grid, it's fine. But it's just as there are state roads and federal roads. We have to start to think of state grids and state electricity grids and national electricity grids, so that you can develop on your own and smarten your own grid. You can contribute to the national grid, so we should never get away from the national grid because there are interstate matters involved. But there should be state grid and there should be national grid, and then there should be certain smart ways of interconnecting those two whenever it is necessary to interconnect them. One could expect a situation where somebody generates and says, all I want to do is send to the state grid, and he only wants to deal with the state grid and has a power purchase agreement with the state grid. And then somehow or the other, the state too wants to sell to the national grid and has a power purchase agreement with the national grid. But the important thing is that the states have better control of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cheta, please, can you take over, please? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Prof. My name is Cheta Azaliam. I'm a physician at Cleveland Clinic, or in Cleveland, and one of the BOTs for DADA. So thank you again for honoring our invitation and giving us your pearls of wisdom. It's always so great to see people who have gone home and been successful, because we know it's not easy. And so that you're an illustration of how people can integrate when they get home. I'm saying this particularly because I have a friend who was a professor of medicine at the University of Las Vegas, very highly successful, had NIH grants, but he went home on invitation of Buhari government, and he couldn't function for 1 year. He was just there, and after that he left. He just said that he just couldn't fit in. So now, you're saying that if the aspirants want to come home, they should come home with a sense of humility. That really makes sense, because now I'm wondering how much of this was because his environment was very toxic, or how much of it was because, he like a humility, sort of a reality situation, knowing how to adapt in that circumstances. But so it's good. So maybe if I know anybody who plans to come home, maybe I should refer him or her to you for counseling. So that
with some money, I will get consulting fees too. So.
Of course.
Because definitely diaspora experience is needed in the country. And also, thank you so much for your activism with diaspora voting. We hope we don't give up. And back to the topic, you're very right by saying no nation can achieve its potential without full development of the power sector. And like you correctly pointed out, there's a huge progress that's been made in the legal field by in the legal scene by allowing decentralization of power. But see who much is given, much is expected, right? Because now the states have to be accountable. It's no longer enough to say NEPA. There is almost no NEPA now, quote unquote. So my question, I'm just using the Enugu and the Abia debacle as a case point here. I'm from Imo State, but my family is in Enugu, and we know that I forget the name of this guy's disco, and they have not been efficient. And also that guy that was in court with Geometric. But you know, time over time, they still retain their license to generate and transmit electricity, even though they are not efficient. They are not meeting their quota. So the question is, you know, I have two questions. One question is, what are the states? So now you're in within the government. Maybe you will give us insight. How do these state governments, so the state regulatory boards, how can they more and better regulate and very importantly evaluate? You know, if you give somebody a license this year to maybe produce or and then distribute electricity, there should be parameters for measuring, you know, whether these tasks are accomplished. And if they're not accomplished, maybe you have to withdraw the license. So that way, anybody joining this, you know, joining the field is gonna be, you make sure they know what they're doing. It's not just some billionaire, you know, just join and have no clue of the technical demands. So that's what my question is. Number two is, how do diasporas really kind of key into this in terms of what are the partnership types that if I have, you know, $5 million and I want to invest in electricity production in, I don't know, Imo State or something. How do you think that the state government or the regulatory board should fashion that? Is that going to be a public-private thing, or it's just going to be just a private company? You come with your quote, and then the government says, okay, we'll give you this, and after that, you let us know what you're able to do. I mean, how do you see those dynamics? Because I think that's very important too to discuss. Thank you.
Absolutely. The first thing has to do with the first question as to the relationship of, I mean, in this new regulated environment, what the existing discourse, how the, you were talking about Arthur Israel, so
yes,
EEDC, and the long problem he had. Huh?
Sorry about that.
The long problem. And the long problem they had with Geometric. You know,
right.
The 2013 unbundling gave the BEDC or gave the discos geographic exclusivity. And when Geometric then wanted to carve ABBA out of that, EEDC reacted and went to court and tied them up. And so that's what happened. Actually, I think Geometric had been given that first off license even before EEDC, but somehow along the other, there was some lacuna that made it possible for EEDC to tie up Geometric. One of the things about the regulation right now is that everybody realizes that a distribution company is not a generation company. It can only distribute what it has. It is the public face of the electricity industry, but many of the crimes that are attributed to it are not really its fault. Its major fault is in its inability to provide meters to citizens so that even the meager electricity that it is providing can be properly metered and citizens can know that they are paying for the electricity that they get. When you have electricity that is very meager and it is given to you at night when you are asleep, and then at the end of the month you are charged 10,000, 20,000 naira. Even if the electricity is worth that amount, you are angry about it. You are not sure about it, that's number one, but it is given to you when you don't need it, and when you get it, it's not enough. It's not 240 volts. It's not 50 hertz. Okay? Electricity that is adequate must be 240 in your home must be 240 volts or 50 hertz. Or if you are running a machine, it should be maybe 400 volts or 300 and something volts and 50 hertz. If it's too high, your electricity, your machine will go haywire. If it is too low, it will not start. You understand? So that's an issue. One has to understand the distribution company. And what we are saying, many of the states are saying, is that an electricity distribution is not just the poles and the wires. It is the poles and the wires and the electricity that goes through the wires. So if you say you're a distribution company and there's no electricity passing through your pole, if there's another company that is able to generate and distribute, you have no rights to disallow them from using even the assets, if the assets are there. So it's like somebody builds a
Prof, I think you're frozen.
Yeah, I think his internet connection is down or something. I think he's even dropped.
Okay.
Oh, well, let's wait, he might rejoin us again. That's the same problem we're talking about, isn't it? And then a part of the issue we're having over there is the legislation from the national government that permits a disco who distribute electricity to bill people for electricity they don't use. That is, in my own opinion, is criminal.
I just think there's a lot of corruption in the system, a lot of corruption. Some of these people don't have a technical know-how to do all the stuff they claim they're doing. And then because they have cronies in government, they don't get sanctioned.
That is true, but if you look at it, apart from the corruption, which, okay, you can attribute it to the corruption. Folks are permitted by law to distribute energy and bill people, even they have, on a wholesale basis. You look at a building and say, okay, you're going to be paying 3,000 naira every month. I don't think there's any incentive for me to give you meter when I know I can collect 3,000 naira from you every month without supplying you electricity. So it's like even the law itself is very faulty right from the onset. So I don't know who thought of that kind of a legislation and passed it, that you can bill somebody, don't create a service and then at the same time, let somebody pay for those services that they don't have. It doesn't make any sense.
Mr. President, do you have a sense of what the practical law is, or is it an enforcement problem?
Those are the things we want to find out from him, because from what I have
I think it's an enforcement problem.
Enforcement as to the customers or to the disco?
I think that the laws do not give these Gencos and discos what we think they really have. It's that there is a general sense. For instance, the law insists that everybody must be metered. But
sorry, maybe Dan there. Can you call and see whether he's able to get that?
Let me call him.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm sorry, maybe go ahead.
Okay. I think that there is the sense in the law that insists that it is your right to be metered. In fact, there are very stiff penalties. But I think that the industry, both in terms of behavior and enforcement, is still very weak, because we are coming from a dysfunctional system, a mindset that has been generally entitled to electricity. Government officials have actually been also abusing these systems, and these opportunistic investors themselves are also taking advantage. So there's a whole lot of mess that is legacy that makes the law enforcement weak, and the law enforcement systems is still a little bit weak. Perhaps if he were here, he would have given us better context to the challenges, or if the real operators are here, we generally have the understanding of what is happening to us as consumers, but we do not know what is happening on the generation company, the distribution companies, or the transmission companies, or even this new law that have just been thrown into the mix, where states can also have extensive powers to both transmit, generate, to license transmission, generation, and distribution, or even own their own transmission, distribution, and generation companies. So it's something that we need to unpack, because investment here is a very high fund. It requires a lot of high funds, and people will just really need to understand the regulatory environment and how it is being operated. Just my thoughts. I wish he can come back to give us perspective, and it's interesting to hear him speak anyway.
Does anybody, as Cordelia speaking, that's one of the questions I was gonna ask, know whether anyone has really quantified the health risk factors or health issues associated with all these generators, fuel, petrol, diesel that people are using in their house to generate power, or in their offices? Is there been any really study done on just how much health risk factor this poses?
Unless we research
it. Can I have a quick? Can I need to? I just need to. Let me just add something quickly. Thank you so much for. It's been an exciting moment anyway for this wonderful talk. But just to answer Dr. Cordelia's question about health risk, we all know that the generators, they exude a lot of hydrocarbons. You don't need any research to tell you the impact of those hydrocarbons, what it does with our system. These are very huge carcinogenics, and we're not surprised why we have this level of cancer that is eroding the society. And you can see the age gap. You see where you have the concentration of cancers are usually in the young. Right now, what you have in Nigeria is that the old are living older, and the young people are dying like flies. And we're dying of a lot of, very short-term illness. The majority of them are cancers. So you don't even need a result. You don't need a research to tell you what's going on with hydrocarbons. These are the same thing that happens that people that live around the oil drilling areas, even other places in the world. So the health risk is very enormous, but what have our government done to make power? Because it is very laughable. I was in South Africa in 2008, and during my stay in South Africa, there was never a time they had an outage. This is South Africa, and that was then almost how many years? And still today in Nigeria, we're still talking about power sufficiency, a whole lot. So we know the problem we have is the problem of corruption. Because if we want to find a solution to our power problems, just the same way we did with our MTN, despite the fact that we're voting so much amount of money to do this, but it's not done. So these are the big questions. In terms of health benefit, the health impact, it is huge, and it cannot be, it cannot be neglected. So I think that's my short answer to that.
I've tried to.
Can I keep asking? Since the guy may not return. He did mention that out of how many states does Nigeria have again?
36.
36.
Abuja, plus Abuja.
I see. They can keep up. So that only 6 states enacted electricity law. Is this the electricity? I mean, what does that really mean? That only 6 states, and which ones are those? Does anyone know? Okay, is this the after they have given them the right to regulate, distribute, transmit, or generate? I mean,
where
these vocabularies are okay.
Okay,
Dan,
I've tried to get in touch with Prof, his phone is off.
Yeah, I think that's
Who is speaking? I've been unable to reach Prof. Martin, I don't know whether you also tried.
Yeah, I tried to text him and he doesn't even reply anymore.
Yeah,
there are multiple things. It could be off the grid. Either the network is down or there's a power failure that affected everything.
Or maybe it's raining. You know, whenever it rains, maybe it started raining just
and
now.
Yeah, I think he lost power.
Dr. Udo, what you've just said, DDM has did a documentary on, especially on Anambra State. It is shocking that Nigerians have been agitating for the taking away of power generation and power distribution away from the exclusive legislative list and started it in the residual list. Just as Prof was explaining here that before, it is only by constitution, only the federal government has the powers to enact regulatory laws, generate electricity and distribute it only by the federal government. Well, surprisingly, President Buhari, when he was about to leave, signed it into law, removing power generation and power distribution away from the exclusive legislative list and putting it in the residual list, thereby empowering state.
The concurrent, not residual.
Yeah, sorry, in the concurrent legislative list, thereby empowering states to enact laws that allows private companies to distribute power. When Tinubu came into power, the first thing he also did, surprisingly, is to enact laws that further empowers power generation and distribution, making it easier to private individuals to generate and distribute power. And now people were hoping to see a plethora of states rushing to enact these laws. Surprisingly, only 4 states, Ekiti, Ondo, Enugu, and 1 other state. Even our own Anambra.
6.
4.
He mentioned 6. I wrote it down.
Unless 2 more has already legislated on it. I don't know.
Okay, maybe 2 more have done. I think Lagos was also, because maybe Prof will be more current than me, of course. Because when we did it, we said maybe Prof will be more current. However, our shock is that Anambra State, where we have someone who claims to be a professor governor, who knows better than everyone else, immediately immediately President Tinubu passed that law. Yes. Emeka Ofo, who has failed abysmally through his EEDC to generate power for the Southeast, rushed down to Anambra State, signed an MOU with Governor Soludo, giving him the monopoly of power to distribute power electricity in Anambra State. And since that time till now, nothing has been done to that effect. So the question is, did Emeka Ofo enact the 419 on Governor Soludo, where Enugu State have moved, they have passed their own laws, enabling private power generation. Anambra State have done absolutely nothing. No other Southeast state. Well, Abia State is lucky because, like Prof said, geometries have been there since a long time in Imo River. And fortunately, when that law was passed, it was easy for Abia State for him to move into action. But having said that, it's I wanted to ask Prof a question, but I don't even know whether I'll ask again because it's annoying. Let me just give a few statistics that will shock some of us. You know, as Prof was speaking about power generation, he said that Nigeria generates only 4,000 megawatts of electricity.
Yeah, 4,000 megawatts. Okay. 4,000, that's correct.
Okay, let me just show something here. What's going on? Okay. Egypt.
And Abia is now generating 34 megawatts, he said.
Okay. Egypt generates 59,000 and 53,000 megawatts of electricity. Egypt. Now look at Morocco. Morocco generates 41.2 terawatt. I don't even know what terawatt means. Those you guys should tell me what
that's more than megawatts.
Okay. Morocco Morocco generates 41 terawatts. I don't even know what that means. They say that their installed energy capacity is 10,630 megawatts, but they generate 41 terawatt, whatever that means. Now,
Because
South Africa props South Africa 51,000. South Africa 51,309 megawatts. Now look at France. France generates 61.4 gigawatts. I don't know what gigawatt means. You guys will tell me.
It's bigger than terawatts.
Okay. Now, Iran, we are talking about Iran. Iran generates 87.9 gigawatts by 2022. Giga. Turkey generates 100 gigawatts, whatever that means, or 329 terawatts of hours of electricity. So my question is, if Nigeria generates only 4,000 megawatts for 200 million people, in fact, if you look at Uganda, that's a should shock, 1,000 and something. Kenya, 2,000 and something. Ghana, 4,000 something. But in actual fact, they say 2,000 something. So the question that should be grabbing our mind is something wrong with us. It's really, really something wrong with Africa, because DADA is about Africa, not only about Nigeria. Why should we be talking of 4,000 megawatts, whereas other countries are giving us 60,000, 100,000 gigatera? What is wrong?
Corruption.
Are we part of the 21st century or what?
Yeah,
so.
Corruption has just eaten into the fabric of everything we do. You know, you were talking about Anambra. You know, they're trying to have a little city within our, I guess, Oka or so, and they needed $500 million or 500, I think it's $1 million. So for those who signed their MOU, I was going to be paying, is that $500,000 for that? And I said, hold on, this is for me to have electricity, road, running water, and everything for me to locate some production within that location.
They will steal your money. It's 419. Don't give any government your money.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm saying, where is the, give me the MOU that you signed for this. Put my name there and I would decide whether that is how much 24/7 electricity, road, and water is a cost in a year to do business.
Don't ever try it. Those who sign such MOU with any good state government, they lost their money.
You see?
Well, they've tried it before, Dan. I heard Cheta say that medical doctors in America here contributed $100,000 for a fund in Nigeria. The fund was dissolved, no accountability, they all lost their money. So before you put your money, $100,000.
Yeah, $100,000. This was during Obasanjo regime. 10 physicians at AMPA. 10 physicians during Obasanjo regime. And
what was the project? What project?
Health, to improve health care delivery and so forth. That was the early days of AMPA. And Dr. Padua was, I believe, one of the leaders at the time of AMPA. And so when Obasanjo came to last year, was that, I forgot him, was that last year or last 2 years? I think it was last year, National Convention. Yeah, so he was telling us, by the way, I heard that, I have so much grudge against these government people. Meanwhile, I heard from others that he and his group, AMPA financed them coming. Okay, when they did the medical stuff mission at Lagos, that's when he got involved. So he came and not one penny did he give. So he was there talking about his achievements. And one of the annoying ones he was telling us was how he made Dangote a monopolist. And he didn't use the word monopolist, but just how the rights he gave him made this man a monopolist. So anyway, Dr. Padua stood up because we're not allowed to ask questions. I have mine ready because we were just coming out of this crazy election. And so Padua narrated what happened. And he said yes. Okay, he said yes, because he gave Tony Elua, the final person who put the nail in the coffin, was the Tony Eluma or Elumelu. Yeah, once he got involved, that was it. They did not get the physicians here involved anymore, and they never had anything. I mean, I came out of it. I went to Dr.
Wait a minute,
you
Doc.
guys needed to file. I mean, they didn't get a penny.
Doctor, may I ask you a question? Did they just give the money to Tony Elumelu, or
no? They gave it to whatever Obasanjo account, whatever. It was working well with another woman that Obasanjo got, because he got
they just paid money into the account. Didn't they see the project to execute the project? Didn't they see it, being executed before?
I don't know the details. He didn't went into all of that. But he narrated how initially those physicians got involved. And then he went from there to a lady who still got them involved. And then he went from that second department to Tony. And that was when the physicians were taken off. They didn't know what else was happening. And that was how they never had anything. The money disappeared.
$100,000 each.
10 physicians. I told them,
I
will go there and get somebody to go after them. I told them, you people should have come together, get a lawyer in Nigeria.
It appears the prof has just read my text message that probably he now has power or internet. Hopefully he'll be connecting soon. But please, gentlemen, post your questions or comments, so that in case he doesn't come on, we can forward these questions and comments to them. And then you can go to the DADA website and read his answers, please. So let me post that here too.
Yeah, the 6 states that enacted that electricity law, please, if you can just put it there. And what are those 6 states? And what are the impediments that's preventing others from enacting theirs?
I don't think it's a matter of enacting law. It's just a matter of putting priority on ramping up the quantum of electricity that we have. Excuse me?
What does that mean, to enact electricity law?
Honestly, all these things we are saying now, why is it that we don't have electricity? What is the problem? That's what I want to know. This question of state this, that, state grid, national grid, they are all just geography.
Right.
Why is it that we don't have electricity?
Sorry to barge in, or rather make my comments. The question is, of course, we have not put priority on energy for years, and it kept rolling on and rolling on and rolling on. And it's got to a point now that it has become so ridiculous that we are talking of 4,000 megawatts to be shared to 200 million people, whereas the gold standard is 100,000 megawatts for 100 million. So,
Prof is back.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prof, for signing back. Can you hear us still?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that I did a hotspot from my phone, and I didn't know that my phone's power was reducing.
You have no electricity to charge your phone.
Yeah, the charge was
Or
going
when Hawk,
down and down.
That's
So
what
the
we're just saying.
electricity. Can I ask a question, Prof?
Naim, they talk about me.
you don't get light.
Yeah, so
No,
yeah,
you don't get electricity.
where I am, we have 24/7 because we are served by our IPP. But my phone did not get Oku.
Okay.
Okay. So can we
Prof,
some
can
people
I ask a question? This
Yeah,
burning question.
Yeah.
Dr. Cordelia, please, can we make this orderly?
Orderly. Mr. Bonifo has had his hand up. Can you please ask the question?
Women and children who have been taken to hospital for the wounds that they've suffered.
Mr. Ebwe, sorry, Ebwe, Bonifo, are you there? Can you ask your question? And after that, Dr. Odo can ask. Because you had your hand raised up first.
Yes.
Give me the left.
Thank you so very much. I've been here and my hands have been up. My question will be like this. Okay, if you want to hide an mission for an African man, you put it in the book. This law of the direction.
We can hardly hear you.
Yeah, somebody may have to repeat his question, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better now.
So I was saying that, like they say, if you want to keep away something from the African man, you put it in the book. This law for the deregulation was done by Buhari, enhanced by and as we speak, just a few states have done it. That means the level of sensitization has been low. This is what they should get. People are coming in. Now, my question would be, what are we trying to do to ensure to sensitize people on this? Is about industrialization. How much dependent on how much light you how much is government doing to ensure that there's so much awareness on this? Investors are attracted in this regard. Power this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bonifo. Can you please articulate your questions in the chat so we can forward it to the prof? Because your internet is a little bit jittery. So I will appreciate if you can type in that question, because that's a very important question you are asking. So we can take it from there. Thanks. Cheta, over to you, please.
Yeah, I think I heard part of his question, but I mean, you can type the rest in. But I think part of his question was, how much is the government doing to encourage people to invest in this? Maybe that might encourage more uptake, especially at the state level. But you can, Mr. Abonifo, you can type in your questions in the chat, because it was very crackly. But I think that's one of the first questions. But Prof, too, before you left, you hadn't answered, you weren't able to get to, I think, my second question, which is kind of like the partnership types for diaspora to get into the
Yes.
So the two questions,
the diaspora partnerships are important. You have to decide where in the value chain you need to get into. Getting a lot of proposals from people in the diaspora who are bringing in partners. And they have all kinds of, and many of them are in the generation arena, where they want to generate by solar in particular. I have one on gasification. I have another one, on gasification of waste. There's a lot of waste to wealth proposals going on. And many of them are trying to do either off-grid solar willing seller, willing buyer communities. Or yesterday, I took some guys to a site where they said they want to generate 20 megawatts based on gas and put it on either the state grid or the national grid. So investors have to decide where in the value chain. What they should not depend on is the state government signing power purchase agreements with them, or state governments promising subsidies. It is actually subsidies that have prevented investors in investing in Nigeria's electricity. Any electricity that's produced now should be based on a willing seller, willing buyer arrangement in which cost-reflective prices are charged. If government is supposed to give subsidy, it should not be subsidy for all, but subsidy for the most needy, based on electricity usage, and not based on you use 10,000 kilowatt hours, I give you 50% subsidy on that, even if you are able to pay for it. But if we see that your pattern of use is just 10 kilowatts per month or whatever, then we know that you are not a super rich person, and they can decide to give that kind of a person 70% subsidy. If you use only 3,000, you may be able to give those people 30%. And if you use above 10,000, no subsidy for you, rather than have subsidy everywhere. So we need to, and the states will have to do something like that. Subsidies should always be given to states. Subsidies should not be given to consumers at the same time as you give them to producers. And in this productive chain, you can give subsidy between where you buy the gas and when you generate, or between the generation and the transmission, or between the transmission and the distribution, or for the most needy in society. But when you just give subsidy to everybody, it gets abused. And in any case, states will not be able to do that. So it is this issue, the part of the advantage of deregulation too, is that states have better control of their lives. You give subsidy all over the country, and you never know whether it is one part of the country that is actually gaining more from the subsidy than others. It is national money, but it's been you are subsidizing some other people. Like, clearly, if you are generating electricity in the south and the persons in the north are paying the same per kilowatt hour than the person in the south, there's no way you are not subsidizing those in the north more than in the south, and vice versa. If you are producing hydro in the north and the person using hydro in the north is paying the same amount of kilowatt hours as the person using that same hydroelectricity in the south, you are subsidizing that person in the south more than in the north. Let each state determine its own primary energy, send the energy to within its own state, determine its own subsidies, and we'll see that investors will come. Investors do not want a situation where somebody else is paying for what you use, because they know that the day that person stops paying for you, you cannot pay. It is the subsidies actually that have driven investors away from the electricity arena. They want people to pay for the utilities that they get.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you. Mr. Bonifo, do you have a clearer audio now, or you
I heard Mr. Agbonifo's question. His question were two parts. One, that why that a lot of the states have not taken up the law, and does that not mean that there was not enough preparation for it? And the secondly, he was asking about how investors would be encouraged. Okay. The reason why the states have not taken up the law is very simple. I mean, Nigeria is is a country where there are many states have many different capabilities. No, that is what federalism is all about. Again, I lived in America. Some things that Iowa will do are different from what Texas will do. They will not take up a law at the same rate as anywhere else. But actually, what we are doing now, we have what we call the Nigerian Governors Forum, and we also have a platform called the Commissioners of Power in Ekiti State in Nigeria. And we have shared our laws. The NGF has written has done a draft sample law that many states can adapt. And we can assure you that by the end of June, now that we have 7 states, by the end of June, several more states would have signed their laws. Those of us who have signed their laws have told them that no law is perfect. Just enact your law to establish an electricity bureau. Write to the National Electricity Commission, to the Bureau, to the National Council on Privatization, to the BEPE. Write to your DISCO that you have set up your regulatory board and you are ready to go. And you'll be given an order for full regulation. And then you start. We cannot do worse than NERC that has been in charge for 60 years and we have only 4,000 megawatts. We cannot do worse. And any attempt to scare the states from doing what they need to do, we will resist very strongly.
Okay, and what about the incentives to investors, maybe?
Well, yeah, incentives to investors will not come from each state. The issue, again, I mentioned very clearly that we must, as the ground norm, talk about willing seller, willing buyer agreements that say a community, you identify what are called productive use of energy in each community and decide that, yeah, this community needs only 40 kilowatt power or 100 kilowatt power because they need it to do, especially industry, not lighting alone. Maybe they are a palm kernel, they want electricity to do, to do their palm kernel. Or there's a dam there. You go in there and talk with the people there and set up a willing seller, willing buyer electricity group in there. And you sell to this community based on their ability to pay, not based on government trying to pay subsidies for them. The government will choose to provide land. The power company, the IPP that we have in Ekiti, we gave them land free. We made roads to the place. We gave security when there were bank guarantees, not our money, but guarantees that say, yeah, we are backing, we will see that this project is completed to the end. And that was why they were able to complete it. So states should be prepared to provide land, provide security, provide road access, provide bank guarantees while the negotiation is going on. And I don't think there will be any problem. In any case, hardly any big financiers want to sponsor large-scale power companies, power projects in the state right now. But they are ready to invest in small scale, 2 megawatts, 3 megawatts, 100 kilowatts for various communities to the grid. And I think that's how we will go.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Dr. Oda, please ask your question.
Yeah, what are the 6 states that enacted the electricity law? And what are the impediments for others for not following?
There are really no impediments. The 7 states that have done now are Lagos, Edo, Ekiti, Enugu, Plateau, Oyo, and Imo. I said 6, right? Yeah, Imo. Jigawa Jigawa is almost ready. There are really no impediments. Like everything, there are always people who say, let's watch. They don't want to be the pioneer people because there's advantage in being a pioneer and there's an advantage in looking back. Those of us who have been writing on energy forever. I mean, I wrote a piece on this unbundling in 2004. I wrote something on electricity, Ekiti 2004. So this is what I've been waiting for 20 years. And I'm not kidding. A lumber knows. I mean, I have a write-up I can share in 2004 in which I talked about unbundling along state and regional lines. 20 years later, this is where we are. God has put me into a situation where I am Commissioner for Infrastructure and Public Utilities in Ekiti State, something I've been talking about for 20 years. I think I will be a bad steward of God if I do not do quickly what those things I felt should have been done 20 years ago.
So it doesn't mean that that you need to enact the law to have your own because Abia State is not among the states you mentioned yet. Aba is the one that is now reigning king of electricity.
No, you make a mistake about that. Abia State geometric did its law. The reason why it took geometric a long time is because the law was a national law. If it had been regulated in Abia, it should have happened long time ago. So there were national laws that said that you could not license Genco within your states. There were national laws that gave complete regulatory exclusive control to discos, whether they generated electricity or not. If you try and do something, there were laws that said that if you try to do something above 1 megawatt, you had to get a license. So this law is absolutely essential for the states, for investors to come and invest in the state.
No kidding. So, all right, I still don't understand what that law is exactly.
Well, okay,
but,
I'll send you a copy of the law. You need to read the electricity constitutional amendment, as well as the Electricity Subsidiary Act, which comes from there, that says that even where state grids occur, states can generate, transmit, and distribute. Before, you could not do it where national grid occurred.
Yeah, you also spoke about these subsidies. In US, subsidies are given based on your application, income verification,
exactly,
and the neighborhood you live in.
Exactly.
So, and it works well. And then
but it's also state-based. It's also in fact, in the US, it's also county-based. I have a home in the US forever. I live in Montgomery County in Maryland. I have a 19.4 kilowatt solar on my house. I do not pay to Baltimore Gas and Electricity any bill from anywhere from February every year until November. I had to get county clearance. I had to get state clearance. I was not allowed to use solar to generate more than 80% of the electricity that I had used the year before. I'm not allowed to use a battery with my solar because they don't want everybody to be completely out of the grid. So there are there are laws and there are local laws, but then there are also federal laws that give incentive for those who want to use renewable energy. So there are federal incentives, there are state incentives, and there are county incentives in the US. And it was the time when solar as a service became possible under Sun City and then Tesla. That's when the rooftop solar industry in America took off. When people bought solar as their own, under their own ownership, it was very difficult for it to take off. But when it became a situation where you had solar on your roof, but you paid to those who gave it to you per kilowatt hour. So that became solar as a service. That is when I signed on in the US, and that's when it took off. So there are regulations that will promote different kinds of electricity. That's what we're trying to do in Nigeria, belatedly.
Okay, thanks, Robert. I think we have some questions on solar in the chat. We'll get to that too. Let's move on to, thank you, Dr. Amodo. Mr. Ayalogo, question, please.
Yeah, good evening. I just want to, we have agreed that the power we have is abysmally, globally low. I've not seen that anywhere.
It's kwashiorkor.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it's such a shame. And my explanation or reasoning is that there hasn't been a serious prioritization of energy needs over the years. Governments have come and gone and nothing. We keep repeating 4,000 megawatts every year, like though we are static. 23 years ago, I served in Cairo, Egypt. They had 27,000 megawatts. Now I told that there are almost 70,000. So I think one thing is that there has to be, we can even declare an emergency on power solutions first, so that we can see where we can take it. I was just finding out that somebody is planning to do a 700 kilometers of road, spending 15 trillion, and we know how much power that can get us. And I think the country probably needs more power now than we need roads. I'm not trying to take that off, but the important is that there needs to be a lot more will to generate energy. And the problem is actually generating enough energy. And we have all the energy mix to do that. We have power, we have the sun, coal, and so on. And in the past, maybe the government has even frustrated some diasporans that have come to try their best. I remember a friend who came to dig coal and got coal, but the objective was to turn coal into energy, electricity, and he got a 1,200 megawatt license and did everything that was needed to be done, had got the coal. Eventually, the problem was just on the issue of government approval of tariff. So that project fizzled out, even though he's comfortably selling his coal around, because everybody is needing coal now, especially the cement producers. So I would just make those comments and feel that the way to go now, because it has become an emergency, we have to find the quick wins. Some of the energy generated, some of the ways to generate energy takes time. For instance, a gas plant takes almost four years to build and all that. But my well, I'm not an electrician, I'm not an engineer, but I've observed that solar energy appears to be one of the quick wins, the ones you can easily put together. And if we were to do what the Indians have done, in less than 8 years, they had moved from almost zero to 70 or 80 gigawatts, which is about 80,000 gigawatts. And we can repeat that kind of thing. I don't know whether it's within our capacity to encourage these people who produce solar panels and all the other consumables for the solar energy to set a plant, a factory in Nigeria where it could be built so that you will produce at a local level some of these items. And that will help us to ramp up what we need. Because solar power, you wouldn't need a lot of grid. You can do micro grid, you can do the rooftops. And there are a number of options which makes it easier to adapt now than some of the other bigger ones, which must also be taken care of because we have gas and so on. We need to do something. We need to get results, not just we've been mooning about our 4,000 megawatts for how many decades now, and it looks like we're not even making any effort. But there is a need now to do so.
Mr. Yalogu, let me first say that again, the 4,000 is just 4,000 municipal. Nigerians are producing far more than 4,000. They're just producing the 40,000 by themselves and not through. So let's first get that clear that they are producing 40,000 megawatts fairly expensively and inefficiently.
Exactly.
And we need to increase the 4,000 megawatts. The two broad categories of energy are renewable energy, solar, hydro, wind, biomass, and non-renewable, largely fuel oil and gas. The cheapest form of renewable tariff-wise, cost-reflective-wise, is hydro. But it is the one that takes the longest time. Mm-hmm. The one that takes the shortest time, but at this time is the most expensive, is solar.
Solar, yeah.
You understand? Mm-hmm. So let us balance cheap and takes a little time and quick and costs a little bit more money. The other issue about solar is that for every megawatt, you need about 2 hectares of land. 2 hectares of land. So Igbo land will not get land. My own state, Ekiti, we do not have land. It is difficult to depend a lot on solar for 2 reasons. There's not enough land, and the land where you use solar on, unless you have a program for what is called agrovoltaics, you will not be able to use that land for agriculture because the panels will have covered land. So except you breed turkeys and chicken under it, or you slant your panel so that the electricity can pass through and you can still do some vegetables or whatever under the panels. You would have used up
rooftop.
No, rooftop. Yeah, rooftop is fine. Rooftop also is, as I said, I use rooftop that I sell to the grid. But you require a certain smartness of grid and a certain cleanliness of grid before you can integrate solar. Because remember that solar is an intermittent source. Okay? It's an intermittent source. You don't have it all day to pass to the grid. So you really have to balance need and production when you have an intermittent approach. But all of this is doable. The only thing I state is that some of these things are doable on a small scale here, small, and that's why states are important. When you want to do this big thing on a national scale, it becomes overwhelming. But you can do it on a smaller scale. Enugu will do its own, Ekiti will do its own, this will do its own.
That's exactly what.
And your primary sources of energy are different. Enugu can depend on coal and decide. The guy who came to do coal needs only to talk to Enugu and not to Abuja, who may not necessarily want Enugu to succeed. He now only has Enugu to talk to. Just as on an international scale, there are countries that don't want Nigeria to succeed. Even within Nigeria, there are people at the national scale, national level, that may not want other states to go ahead of them. So in a federal system, it is important for states to embrace, and that I'm talking about progressive states, to embrace anything federalism that gives more control to within the states, especially in technological areas.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Please, let's be considerate of Prof. You know, in Nigerian time, it's almost 10 o'clock. So please, let's keep our questions a bit short.
I'm fine. I will take questions until I tire. At my age, I tire by 11, but
11, okay.
Okay, we're almost getting to 11 now. Is that my BA next?
Yeah, I think, Prof, thank you very much. Very enlightening. I have 3 questions and they are very short. One is to look at the globe. There was a time I came in over here, some years ago, and I walked around to see that there were a lot of existing plants that were just laying about across the world that we could immediately put on ships or on some barges and deploy to our destiny. I think we did something like that in Lagos. We attempted something like that with the Failed Enrons initiative. What is your outlook to all of these plans that are everywhere and how this can be plugged into what the states are doing? Immediately pick some of these plans that are idling out across the world, in the US, in Europe, and all of the place, and bring them in. That's one area that I sort of thought I should pick your mind on. The second point is we have the issue of behavior. I know regulations are coming in, but it appears that the enforcement becomes some of the most basic things. How are we thinking about behavior modifications, both from the people both from the investor's point of view and from the consumer point of view and from the regulator's point of view, and how these enforcement issues can quickly help ease out the challenges we are making? Corruption is a big issue. People paying tariff in order to enforce that, to make that work. Recently, they created a different tariff structures that allowed particular zones to be able to, do that, have that. So I'm looking at all these myths. What are your own thinking? How are we looking forward in utilizing available opportunities of facilities that are already lying idle, the social difficulties of driving regulations and investments into the district? What are we looking at in terms of educating and awakening our communities and our society to respond to the rapid need for these new ideas that are beginning to come on us? Thank you very much.
Very important questions. The issue of stranded generation is important. There are stranded generation all over the place. Generation plants that are not generating because they do not have gas. Okay? There are even plants that are diesel operated.
Thermal, yes. Thermal and diesel,
yes. Yeah, even on diesel. Anytime we are talking about solar plant for a community, many times these solar plants are not more than 60 kWp or 100 kWp. But there are many, even private institutions, individuals who have 100 kVA generator in their houses. I have a company here that has two 360 kVA generators in his compound. That is 720 kilowatts. That's 0.7 megawatts that he has. He bought it for himself or for his institution. Imagine we license that person as a Genco, and he produces with that his diesel and sells the electricity to people close by to him. There are many stranded, and if we don't want diesel, we can change that particular diesel generator into gas.
Yes.
And have him sell electricity to people within 2 kilometers around him. That is what a state can do. We could look for all these stranded generators around the state, convert them into gas, and have them sell the electricity to the grid. Have, we build houses in Nigeria without a concept of the roof being used as a rooftop, being used for solar. But imagine we find a place in your town that has a roof that is well disposed to solar, and you go and put a solar panels in there. Suddenly you see you have a generation plant, a solar generation plant that is rooftop based, and you sell that to either within its own community or to the grid. So again, those are things that states can do and do very well. So I think those are things that we need to be able to do. In terms of tariff setting, as much as possible, you protect the citizens from a Shylock distributor, but you do not, you ensure that that company is there to make money. It should be able to make money to sustain itself. And the state should to a lot of extent, shy away from assuring the investor that it can only succeed if the state pays subsidy. That has been the Achilles heel of our power industry. We think that if we tell the investor that, don't worry, whatever, we will fix the tariff. We know that you want to make money, you will make your money. We don't want we love our citizens so much. We don't want them to pay higher than this. And because you will make your own money, we will put in the difference between what our citizens can pay and what you need to earn. Some investors will come, but most investors will not, because they believe that at some point the government may not be able to pay, and they will walk away. In terms of changing the social behavior of our citizens, in our law, we have made vandalizing electricity assets, stealing the lines, an economic crime. And we will make examples of some people and energy theft. If you steal somebody's chicken, the only person you have incapacitated is the owner of that chicken. But if you steal 20 meters of electric line, all the citizens down that line, you have incapacitated them. It's a major economic crime. We have made that a serious economic crime in our law. And there are some states that are actually thinking of having an electricity offense law, the electricity offense tribunals, mobile courts, that immediately somebody is caught like that, the court sentences that person. We have 2 cases in Ekiti right now that are going on. We want to make examples of them. We will publicize them to let people know that it is very, very serious. The last issue is that we must let our people know that they must pay for electricity. Electricity is not a service, it's a commodity. If you use electricity, you should pay for it. If you don't want to use too much of it, then turn off your lights. Turn off your lights. If you don't want to pay for too much water, when you see a leak, plug it. So people must understand that they should pay for electricity, and they should not tamper with electricity assets, either by tampering with their meters and or stealing or tampering with the transformers or stealing line. And finally, the distribution companies must give meters to customers. No more electricity estimated billing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Sorry, the regulations too is ordered. It's not just on the citizens, right? I mean, enforcement of regulations. How do you in Ekiti State make sure that these companies that are the investors are? How do you evaluate them? I mean, how do you make sure that they do what they're supposed to do? Do you have like punitive measures if they fall below the standards? Because that's a big issue.
Well, what we have done, because the regulatory boards are just new. So what we have done is we've adopted all the laws, all the sanctions of the National Electricity Regulatory Commission. We have, in some places, we have reduced the sanctions, at least as a start, because sometimes we thought that some of them are too excessive. But we have adopted most of the processes and the sanctions. I agree with you that it is enforcement that is key. We are just starting with our own regulatory situation. We do not, what we have said is that we want to first start with a light touch regulation so as to let the electricity market in the state to grow. Then as time goes on, we will adapt the regulation based on the size of the market. There are times when regulations can be overburdensome, and they want to the company offend, and you charge it 20 million, thinking that you want to make sure it knows that you are serious. But you charge it 20 million, it could kill it. It could kill the company. So it has to be a balance between what you want to achieve and the 2 things of what you want to achieve. So we will start with light touch regulations, but we want the market to grow before we start to be too punitive.
Okay.
Can I just ask another one, please? There was a time. Is there another one?
Yes, there's somebody else, Mr. Austin.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
after that, then you can act.
Okay.
Mr. Austin, please.
Austin's iPhone.
Austin's iPhone.
Oh, thank you. Yes. You mentioned Anambra State a couple of times, and I think the comment was that somebody had a monopoly on the electricity generation. Is there another path to getting involved in either the generation or distribution in Anambra State?
Yes, I mean, the NERC has indicated that the exclusive license that they give to, for example, EEDC remains. But we are also stating, but it allows you to provide licensing for alternative distribution company and GENCOs. There are, in all of these states, there are both what they call unserved and underserved aspects, underserved places within the state. So the first place that the state should really look at, rather than try to contend with the existing discourse is to look at unserved and underserved areas within each state and decide to provide electricity to those. The discourse and when we say unserved, it means that there's no Genco there and there may be no electricity lines there. If they need electricity there, those are places where the existing discourse will not talk about exclusivity. You cannot talk about exclusivity where you don't have a line there. There's no Genco going there. So we can look at both unserved and underserved areas. There are even underserved areas within cities. You can have a situation in a town where electricity has not gone there, either because they just set up on their own and they never went to the disco to have lines there. If those people come anew, and rather than go to BEDC, they go to this Genco that has a distribution outlet. So the state can license them. And if EDC, which serves Anambra, EDC serves Anambra, Enugu, Imo, Ebonyi, and Abia. Okay? If he wants to talk, he can go to court. But I can assure you that the court will say, if you are not serving these people, and somebody is ready to serve there, and you don't have a pole there, you don't have a wire there, and you have a Genco that is prepared to provide electricity to them, and the electricity board has licensed them, I don't think they will win in courts. So my first point is that we should look at unserved and underserved places within the states as the first point of where we should increase electricity within each state.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Cordelia.
Yeah, so Prof, a year or two ago, some areas of the South were underwater. And some of the reasons given were, one was inability to dredge the River Niger. And the troubling one I read was the hydro plant that's upstream that may have damaged, and that if that ever damages or someone wants to hurt the South, they can go damage it. And the water there will just flood and South will be underwater. How much truth is in this?
Well, I was in Lagos last week, and there's a program called SPIN, Sustainable Power and Integration in Nigeria. Now, what they're looking at are the dams. There are many dams in Nigeria. My own state has 4 dams in Nigeria. And dams are really supposed to do 4 or 5 things. Dams can be used for potable water. Dams can be used for hydro. Dams can be used for fisheries. Dams can be used for irrigation. Dams can be used for recreation. And dams can be used for flood control and for drought preparation. 6 things. Okay? For potable water, for irrigation, for power, for recreation, for flood control, and for drought preparation. The issue about drought control is that these floods are always predictable. NIMET every year tells us the states that are likely to have flooding at any given time. What that means is that along that path, there should be channels made such that this water that is going is able to flow into certain places all along, so that there will be man-made lakes during the flooding period. All along, maybe every 100 miles, there is a man-made lake that is, 1 meter diameter and 8 feet deep that will, so as the water is flowing down the river Benue or the Niger, some of this water will go into these side channels. Okay, so that's a flood control. There are some of the areas in Nigeria that are high elevation. So some of that water can be pumped into what are called pumped storage. Some of the water can go into a high level, and it will, I mean, you need energy to pump to that high level. But then at some point, it can now, from potential height to kinetic height, you put in a turbine there, you can generate electricity, and so on. It requires the states to have good data about its water resources. And I think this is where this spring project is starting with. There are a lot of good projects in Nigeria. It's just that many times when civil servants, when they don't quickly see what they will get into their pockets, they lose interest. But some of us are trying to work against that and work very hard to ensure that when we see a good program, we see it to the end.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. I don't think there's any more hand that's raised that we haven't answered the question. So we'll just go quickly to the few questions in the chat. So Martin says, how difficult is it to get permits to participate in the electricity sector? And then I'll just do maybe 2 questions at a time. And then I think Mabie said, does the law give states power to transmit? I mean, if they do, yeah. So,
I mean, of course, you know that we have just started, and we are hoping that we have at this stage just we are adapting the NERC rules, but making sure that you don't need to go to Abuja to get your permit. There's difference between permit and licenses, by the way. So, but you may get a license, but we may not permit you to use that license for whatever reason. Okay, but so there are permits and there are licenses. So we are hoping that we'll make it easy for people to get permits and licenses to do what they have to do to ensure that our citizens get electricity. The second question was what? So
does the law give states power to transmit?
Yeah. This law will not succeed if the states do not have a notion of a state grid. There's just no way. If you depend only on the national grid, then we will always only depend on what the federal government does. And as a state, there's a limit to how much you can actually tamper with the national grid. So this law will succeed if states start to think of their own state grid. And when you talk about your own state grid, it means you are going to talk about your own GENCOs, your own transmission line, and your own distribution line. In general, because of the way electricity is, you can have several GENCOs within the state. You can have several distribution companies within the state. It is always better to have one transmission company so that you can regulate how electricity goes between the GENCOs and the DISCOs. So conceptually, we will think of one state transmission company and one national transmission company. I think that is how we want to think of it. And that transmission company, you know, the transmission company in the federal government now has been broken up into what they call the TSO, the TSP, that is the transaction service provider, and the ISO, the independent supply operator. They have there. So
the
one
transaction, is it the BET, the bulk electricity?
no, not embed. No, not embed. Embed is probably going. Embed used to be the bulk purchaser.
Yeah.
Bulk purchaser of electricity. But TCN, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, has been broken up into TSP and ISO. And they have good reason why that has been done. Something like that too may happen at the state level. But you need a single state transmission company alongside the federal transmission company. You can have many state GENCOs, and those state GENCOs will be GENCOs that generate electricity that are transmitted within the state. The transco, the state transco, will be that one that is confined within the state. And the discos, the state discos will be those confined within the state. The national transmission will still be there. It cuts across all the states. So that's what needs to happen. That's conceptually what is expected. A state grid alongside a national grid.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Dan, I thought I saw your hand for like 5 seconds. You've changed your mind about asking a question?
Well, I wanted to, Prof.
Yeah.
How do you rate the several governments that have administered the affairs of Nigeria in terms of power generation? In the course of this conversation, I just did a little Google. Obasanjo was much maligned for allegedly spending $16 billion, but it appeared that in terms of actual investments, he really did a lot. Goodluck Jonathan was generally perceived as running a corrupt administration, but the facts show that, in fact, in terms of power generation and distribution, he actually did quite a lot. Buhari came into power. I just researched Buhari kind of did almost absolutely nothing, apart from maybe 1 or 2 hydro power generation in northern Nigeria, which evidently did nothing to impact on the quantum of power generation in Nigeria. So how do you share this view? And what do you expect for Nigerians to look forward to in terms of power generation from this present administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Thank you.
If you read my piece of 2004, it was 4,000 megawatts I was talking about 20 years ago. I was saying then too that 24,000 megawatts for, at that time it was 170 something million people. I was complaining. 20 years later, it's still 4,000. So I don't know all the administrations that have gone on before Buhari and during Buhari. I don't know what they said you could have done. Obasanjo had a singular opportunity to make the most impact in the state. But they should have concentrated on smartening the transmission of the country, smartening it. He spent a lot of money on generation, on buying turbines. Some of the turbines were so big, they could not cross some of our bridges. They were left in the ports for a long time, in such a long time that when they got to it, the original equipment manufacturers said their guarantees had expired. So we spent a lot of money on bringing in generation. But you would know that we have maybe 13,500 megawatts of generation capacity. But we have only 8,000 megawatts of transmission capability. And because of the centralization of power, we have ATC and C losses, aggregate, technical, commercial, and collection losses, as high as 40%. Wow. As high as 40%, sometimes 46%. It's like you working hard to make 100 orange or 100 mangoes. And you know that with all your effort, you will not be able to sell more than 40 mangoes. And yet you have procured land to cultivate 100 mangoes, spent money on fertilizers for 100 mangoes, but you know that no matter what you do, you won't be able to sell more than 40 mangoes. What's going to happen? Those 40, because you want to get your investment back, just those 40 mangoes will be more expensive than if you had been able to sell all your 40 or your 100 mangoes for the same investment. That's what has happened in our electricity industry. So let's not get into the issue of rating Buhari, what's his name, Jonathan by power. None of them has done anything that we can write home about. None. Okay? Provided they were trying to solve it from the center. You know, I think Buhari, he was the one who signed on to Siemens. Maybe it was Jonathan, I don't remember. But I know that I know that Chiari, the guy who died, he had gone to Germany to sign on to the Siemens presidential power initiative that is being talked about. So it isn't as if each regime has not tried to do something, but they've all tried to do it on a federal issue. And that was why they were it's a federal issue, and they also still had subsidy in their mind. I am not against subsidy, but I just know that if you try and subsidize a utility, you will not get investments. Because utilities are what individuals use, and investors want you to be able to pay for what they will give to you. If they believe that you depend on Father Christmas to use a utility, they will shy away from it. And that has been the death of that. So it is, I am partisan, Elomba. You know that I am a supporter of Tinubu from day one. But but Buhari's electricity constitutional amendment and the Subsidiary Electricity Act that puts electricity in the hands of states. If the states do it well, it has fundamental ability to improve the electricity. Same as police. If the police issue is made on a state basis, you will see improvement in security in this country. There are many things in this country that have been deformed because of the unitary federalism in the state. And energy is one of those most badly hurt, as well as security.
Okay, thank you, Prof. We have just a couple of minutes before we let you go. We have just a few questions here. Ms. Stella says, do we have in Nigeria an electricity regulatory agency authority? I think you've answered that. Yeah. And then Martin says, how does solar power production get linked into the current national grid?
Well, it's a big issue. We will increase the use of solar. The one thing about Nigeria's economy is that because we are so import dependent, things that are stated as being viable elsewhere become distorted within our environment. The solar industry for power is a very contingent industry. It's not only the panels. There's what's called the balance of plant. You have the panels, you have the controller, you have the inverter, you have the, different, you have the batteries. Okay, you have the batteries. In fact, it is the the BESS, the battery electricity supply service. That's the most expensive in the solar value chain. Okay? Even in the US, solar is heavily subsidized because they are working towards a climate change. They have climate change aims. So there's a lot of incentive in the solar industry. That's why I told you that solar is quick to deploy, but it's the most expensive, even abroad, not to talk of Nigeria, because in Nigeria, in the solar industry, it's not just the panels themselves. You have to talk about the inverter. You have to talk about the controller. These are all electronic parts of that. You have to talk about the battery. So that's really, let's be realistic about it. The percentage of solar will increase, especially rooftop. But I think we are a gas country. We are really a gas country. We're a gas province we're a gas country with an oil province. We are not really an oil company. We are really a gas company, and we should not fall into the imperialistic trap of saying, forget about fuel something. Natural gas is clean, is also clean. Okay, and we should use what we have to go to the next step and not be fooled into saying that we want to use other things that we don't have. We should use compressed natural gas. We should use LPG. We should use LNG. We should use everything that God has given to us to ensure that our electric situation is improved.
Thanks, Prof. We're rounding up here. I just have questions from two people.
Again.
Mr. Mogo.
And that would be the last two.
Yeah, that's the last two. That's the last two. Actually, Mr. Mogo has a couple of questions, but I'll just summarize. Basically, what he's asking is, how does diaspora get involved? What can we do?
I've answered that at some point, yeah.
Yeah, you did mention the investors to decide on kind of our value chain.
Yeah, where they want to enter, and they may either be agents or if they have your money, like Dr. Chi. What's your name, madam? I think you had some $5 million. $5 million.
Yeah, $5 million in my dream.
Yeah. So you can bring your $5 million to Ekiti State.
Yes, I think he said, what is the core issue of electricity supply? So do you think if somebody really wants to invest, is that so much in generation or distribution, or what
it depends. I would say he should choose a state. It doesn't have to be a state, but he should choose a state and find out in that state what their core problem is. And invest. Yeah, so you can choose a raft of states. It may be generation in one state and transmission in another state. And it may be meters in a fourth state. Before he knows it, he has a broad national interest. All of this may be in one state. He may want to improve electricity access in rural communities. That may be his interest. He may want to improve electricity for water supply. He may want to improve electricity for those who are in the agri sector. So he may go to a special agri processing zone and provide them electricity, knowing that they can pay. Nobody will come and invest in the electricity industry and be Father Christmas. These are high capex activities. So he needs to be sure that the persons he's providing electricity to will pay him back. And that requires him to identify those people, know that they are productive users of energy, and know that they are ready to be metered and pay cost-reflective prices.
Wow, very insightful. Thank you so much. The very last question is from Austin's iPhone. I think it's a little bit more kind of a specialized question here. He said, how can I get engaged in electricity generation and distribution in Anambra State? I have a Canadian nuclear company interested in Nigerian markets.
Nuclear.
Nigeria never reached there.
Well, Daniel, if you read my piece of 2004, I did propose a nuclear option for electricity in Nigeria, because the nuclear is the one option that can provide the largest amount of electricity in the quickest amount of manner. You can provide 1,000 megawatts of electricity within a year of its approval. You can use a space that is no more than 1 acre or 2 acres. No other energy can do that. But before you can get a license to do that nuclear, you have to go to EIA, go to everywhere in order to get. So it can take you 5-6 years to get the license to produce 1,100 megawatts. And nobody wants a nuclear facility in his backyard. NIMBY, not in my backyard. So you have to fight those two issues, and the NIMBY issue and the length of time required for licensing. And of course, in a nuclear company, you must always site it near where there's a lot of water, because it requires a lot of cooling. So so it has its own limitation. You have to site it near a river, okay, or near the ocean or something, because it requires
a lot of international regulations that follow it too.
Yeah, that's the regulations that that will take a long time for it to be licensed. I mean, they have all kinds of licensing requirements, but there are micronuclear reactors now that will do it that will give 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts, maybe 20 megawatts. But most times, nuclear reactors are very large-scale reactors. But South Africa has been developing some micronuclear reactors that they call them pebble reactors and so on. That, I mean, I've been reading and looking at them, but I know that I don't think in my lifetime anybody will want a nuclear reactor in Nigeria.
But the accident is devastating.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bom, I don't know whether it's Mr. or Miss Boma Johnson Hart made a statement which I think all of us agree with, and he or she said, "I thank you very much for for all you do. May the Lord continue to give you wisdom and good health as you work hard towards improving the welfare of Nigerians." So on that note, thank you very much for such an enlightening lecture and interactive session. We usually have a transcript from these conferences, and then we send it out to all our members and different groups. So at least up to 500 or more, even diasporans, to see this. And maybe we'll be able to get a couple of investors into this area, maybe for Ekiti.
Exactly. That's really the whole aim, that we want to have a climate for investors to invest wherever they wish to invest in the country. It doesn't have to be, wherever they want to invest in the country.
Thank you. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Cheta. Thank you very much for the moderation. You've always done a great job. I know the prof is a little bit tired now and ready to go to sleep, but I would have loved him to, hear how he can encourage some other folks he has in the diaspora to join DADA, so we can be able to at least make good impact on whatever is happening in Africa and Nigeria in particular. And also, if he has
let me advise DADA. Let me advise DADA. I lived in the States from 1978, December 31, continuously till 2011. Okay, my kids, everybody is still in the US. If you want DADA to succeed, first thing is that it should not be a purely membership organization. Get an executive secretary who you pay to do your work. Because many times what happens is that either during elections or whatever, there are tussles. Our diaspora, many of us are neurotic. Yeah, I'm not kidding.
No, you're right. I agree.
You understand? Get an executive director who understands your aims and objectives. And that person, you pay him or pay her. It may be even better for you to get somebody who's not a Nigerian to run, because it's a good concept. But I know that when it is just purely run and you have a president, that it is during the next election when you are changing over, everything goes scatter. That's number one. Number two is that focus on a few things and see how you succeed in those few things in 1 year, 2 years. And then those things that you think you can't do, drop them. Those things that you think you are doing well, let your organization be known for a few things, not for all things. You know, when they say DADA, then we'll know that, yeah, in this, maybe it's in technology or in financial management in the country or continent. Just find a good niche, a few good niche, driven by a good executive director. And I can see many of you are well articulated and successful, I think. I wish you well.
Thank you.
Wish
Thank
you
you
well.
very much.
Thank you.
And also, I wanted to point out too that this organization was actually a brainchild of Dr. Udo, and we've given her the privilege to do the vote of thanks on our behalf to whoever speaker we have. So, Dr. Udo, please.
Yeah, wow. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Udo. Indeed, I'm an investor in Nigeria. And I stayed really key in, and I didn't do anything but just sat here and listened, taking in everything you have to say, because it's real. So I'm also one of the BOT members of DADA. So we thank you for this education on electricity issues in Nigeria. Electricity continues to be an impediment for industrialization in Nigeria. And as a physician, we know the many health issues related to pollutions caused by generators and fuel.
Yeah.
Time is so limited to know everything we want to know about electricity in Nigeria, including the renewables, the solar, hydro generators, and etc. But I believe others on this forum gain some useful knowledge on power availability in Nigeria and issues surrounding their uses in Nigeria. I hope we'll call on you another time to come over and talk more as the states are gearing up. It's great that states can do it now. So at least we have to hold our states responsible for not having power. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prof. It's been a great pleasure. I'm sure everybody here will agree that you've done a fantastic job, and we hope to have you back again because this power thing is something that we're really interested in, and we want to continue to get more insight. And I know you've given DADA some very sound advice on how to be successful. As the interim president of DADA, I will also like to give a little bit of advice to you, if it might help you to be successful. In planning, is a very important thing that I see lacking in Nigeria. If they planned well, they will not bring a turbine that is bigger than their road or their bridges.
Yeah.
That's just the first thing that struck me when you mentioned that. And this is the first time I'm hearing it, and it's a very useful information. So if we can continue to stress on planning, 90% of your time planning, putting a good plan together, the remaining 10% is more than enough to execute it. But if you keep planning as you go, thinking, oh, we'll have to build a bridge when the turbine gets here, then $16 billion is a lot of money to lose by a country like Nigeria. You know, but thank you again. Hopefully, like Dr. Cordelia said, we want you to come back here and tell us how simple it's going to be for the diasporans to come back to Nigeria and invest in power infrastructure.